Welcome back. You're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition. So, some private security organizations say the proposed Firearms Control Amendment Bill might make it difficult, for their members to respond to crime and protect communities. The draft amendments aim to tighten some of the gun control laws in the country. But to give us a perspective on this, we are now joined by Yaseen Theba, who's the Director of Vision Tactical. Yaseen, a good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us. So I think we'll certainly look at some of the issues that you've raised with the Firearms Control Amendment Bill, but I think just to help us really understand Vision Tactical and the perspective that you speak from, Vision Tactical, and I suppose the focus of your work in the security industry.
Well, Vision Tactical is a private security company, and we proactively respond to emergencies in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and Durban. What we are seeing with the recommended draft is that it's limiting us in our operations. If these recommendations are gazetted, it will basically make it impossible for us. But I think our biggest issue with the draft is that it's very vague. There are a number of clauses that don't stipulate exactly what we are allowed to do, what we are allowed to carry. And I think that's our biggest issue with the draft at this stage. Okay, and
perhaps you can clarify that for us. My understanding of really some of the issues that have been raised by the private security industry has been the limitation of the number as well as the types of firearms that security personnel may use. I know that there is, of course, the understanding that where we're talking about semi-automatic firearms, they may only be used when we're seeing private security companies transporting valuables or overseeing the security of critical infrastructure. So perhaps talk to me about what you find particularly vague. Yeah.
Just to elaborate on how vague some of the recommendations are.
Sure.
The recommendation that security companies should carry a reasonable amount of ammunition. What would classify as a reasonable amount for security companies? We know that some security companies have got 10 guards, and others have got hundreds, and others have got thousands. So our armories are equipped to handle emergencies so that we can respond quicker to incidences. We know that when there's protest action, for example, or when Zamas are attacking properties, private entities along the abandoned mines, we know what sort of resources are required to respond to those sort of cases. And having ammunition at hand makes a difference and saves lives. So I think that's been our biggest issue, that words like reasonable amount. And then again, when it comes to semi-automatic rifles, we know what the suspects are using. We know that suspects are walking into shopping centers, robbing jewelry stores, and we need to have that kind of response where we can combat and save lives, save property, assist people when these suspects are walking into shopping centers. And that basically limits us not to own semi-automatic firearms. Another concern is that handcuffs, pepper sprays, tasers is now classified as prohibited items. And in the event we need to use it, we need to get written permission, which could take a lot of time, making it impossible for us to respond, making it impossible for us to combat suspects when they are attacking members of the public.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting one that you talk about. You talk about handcuffs, and one of the provisions being that the handcuffs would now be classified as weapons. I mean, talk to me about how private security companies have in the past used handcuffs in being able to subdue criminals, and also how that has been of assistance to the SAPS, an important relationship.
Just today, we actually put out a social media post asking people who do they call when there's an emergency. And 78% of the public voted that, just on a small poll of ours, 78% of the public voted that they contact their local security company. We are the first responders in most cases, whether it's a cash in transit scene, whether it's a fire, whether it's a robbery, hijacking. And I mean, of course, even crimes like CIT, robberies. And the first thing we need to do is secure the scene, make it safe for the public. And in most cases, we have to apprehend the suspects until SAPS gets to scene. We know the demand that the South African Police Service is under, lack of resources, lack of vehicles, and we know how long it can take at times for police to arrive at a crime scene. It's our responsibility to apprehend those suspects, and we need handcuffs or cable ties to apprehend those suspects. Making handcuffs a prohibited item makes it very, very difficult for us to restrain a suspect, to ensure the safety of the public, and also the safety of our officers that are responding at these scenes.
Yeah, and you talked about tasers, tear gas and water cannons as well, Yaseen.
Well, we know in South Africa, we're seeing protest action spurring up all over the place. And I mean, it's often private security companies that are mobilizing because they are on the ground. They are very localized in their response. And as private security companies, we are often responding to protest action. If we have to now get approval to use basic equipment like pepper spray or tasers or rubber bullets, for example, it makes it basically impossible to combat. And it ultimately gives the upper hand to the suspects that are looting, suspects that are taking advantage of protest action to carry out their criminal activities. We look at this in shock because as much as we know that the industry needs to be regulated, we also know that partnerships with the police, and we see what partnerships and response together with the police, how it helps the public, how it helps combat crime. On the ground, police are working with private security companies, not only for responding, but also following up of information, eyes and ears on the ground through the E2 project. There's great partnerships that are seeing great results. But initiatives like this create a major barrier of us and them. And we are definitely responding to it, ensuring that we're making our voices heard, so that we can equip ourselves to protect South Africans at large.
Yeah, here's the problem, though, Yaseen, and one would argue that this is what this legislation seems to deal with, is the high numbers of illegal firearms that we do have making the rounds in our communities and in our country. And a lot of these illegal firearms, the argument is made that were at some point legal firearms or were in the hands of legal holders. So there's, of course, the fact that we do see some of the firearms that are used by private security companies finding their way into the hands of criminals. I mean, just how big of a problem is that? And how does the private security industry then tackle that, which is essentially a massive problem that adds to the amount of guns that we have in our areas?
There is no doubt that there is a number of illegal firearms. We know that when the crime stats was announced, the minister and the national commissioner destroyed thousands of firearms. The gravity of the situation is absolutely ludicrous. We know that there is too many illegal firearms floating around. However, to brush the entire security industry with one brush and basically classify everyone as or try and regulate the private security industry to this extent, disarms companies that are registered, that are complying with the Act. There are laws already. I mean, those companies that are not abiding to the Firearms Act, those illegal firearms that are there, need to be taken off the streets. And laws like this don't take those firearms off the streets. Laws like this make it difficult for us to get to those suspects that are using that very same firearms. What we are encouraging Psira and the South African police, including the Minister's office, is to engage on how we can collectively look at making our streets safer, getting the illegal firearms off, and using the existing laws, tightening up on the existing laws to ensure that people comply, companies comply, and there's better control of firearms, not just for the security industry. There's better control for firearms, even with the general public. And through initiatives, we need to ensure that these people that are taking advantage of the firearms and the illegal firearms, or using security companies so that they can own firearms and expose firearms in a wrong or forceful way that it shouldn't be used, are exposed.
Yeah, what's interesting is you've got the portfolio chairperson for the Portfolio Committee on Police, Ian Cameron, who has taken to social media platforms and has talked about what this amendment really does for a few issues. And I'm reading from an article where he's quoted as saying here that what it does is it opens the industry up for punishing law-abiding firms for unproving accusations and making routine armed response illegal in practice, which I think are two particularly big issues, because they could lead to, I suppose what the chairperson is saying is the danger of litigation against private security companies.
True. I mean, we contracted to businesses to offer a service and to respond and keep our clients safe, to keep the South African public safe. I think it's everyone's responsibility to keep the public safe, but it falls on the private security companies and law enforcement to be the forefront of that battle. I mean, it's no secret that the private security companies have got successes in collaboration with private security companies. I've just attended the ministerial dinner this evening, where the minister was present, and I mean, he's very openly made it very, very clear that every entity, private security companies, business against crime, through the E2 project, we've played a major role in making sure that suspects are put behind bars. And we need to strengthen that partnership. But of course, I mean, we're gonna be continuing to ask the minister, how do we join hands with you when we don't have the firing power to take on these suspects that are walking brazenly into shopping centers, malls, hijacking, and I mean, they've got the firepower. If we don't have the firepower, we just can't combat them with the South African police. Yeah.
Well, talk to us about how your very own organization is going to be engaging with the changing legislation moving forward, Yaseen.
Well, we've consulted our legal team. We're busy putting documents together so that we can present our argument to the ministry, to Psira as well. We are also engaging on other platforms. There's a number of collaborations and groups that are coming together so that we can make our voices heard, and we will continue to make our voices heard so that we can find common ground to ensure that South Africans are safer with new regulations and new guidelines on, and I mean, again, keeping everything compliant. And I think together with engagement, we can ensure that we find a balancing line to achieve this.
All right. Yaseen, we really do appreciate your time, and we'll be watching, of course, this process unfold moving forward. Yaseen Theba there is Director for Vision Tactical, speaking to us this evening, sharing his views on the security industry, of course, having raised some issues around the proposed Firearms Control Amendment Bill. Well, you're still watching Newsfeed PM, the late edition. When we come back, we're in conversation with the Black Forum of South Africa, which says it's filed an urgent application in the High Court, challenging what it calls the unlawful appointment of 5 individuals to the Board of Trustees of the Independent Development Trust by the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. We speak to them on the other side of this. Stay with us.